Let's see. Hello, everyone in the chat. We're just trying to sort out some technical issues. We'll be with you in just a little bit. Oh, magic. That just became better. Have you done something?
Really? I didn't do anything.
Okay, it must be just like an automatic buffering type situation going on.
Okay, cool.
Oh, my screen's just gone blank. Cool. And are we hearing audio from your microphone or from your AirPods?
Microphone, definitely. I mean, that should be clear, I hope.
Yeah, it's pretty clear.
It doesn't sound like a tinny mess.
It doesn't sound like a tinny mess. It sounds slightly robotic, as if you're still kind of buffering, almost.
I'm skeptical of this iCloud situation.
Yeah, maybe the iCloud situation is being weird.
I'm going to dig into settings a little bit more. And also potentially this. Yeah, I'm getting some jitter on your video now as well. Maybe I'll start. See what I can do. Alright, sounds like someone just opened a delicious beverage.
Oh yeah, that would be one of those mini cans of Diet Coke. I think those mini cans are the one, because often with a full can I find that I get sick of it by the time I get halfway through.
Yeah.
The mini can just hits the spot.
Airplane cans.
Yeah, the little ones, yeah. Oh, they're slightly smaller than airplane. Airplanes are sort of like long and thin. The little ones are like short and thin.
I don't know if I've seen this. Just son of a bitch. I can only like completely delete all of iCloud from my.
Yeah, you probably don't want that.
No, ideally not. Oh, but I'll tell you what I could do. I could just delete the files it's trying to sync. That'll be my last attempt. Might be worth a try. So, what's it trying to do? I think I know. It's going to be these, I think. So, let's give this a go. And possibly these. Okay. Let's see how we go. I know there's also a thing where macOS throttles bandwidth for apps that are in the background. That's always a fun one.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, it'll be fine. Cool. Let's just kick things off. So, hello everyone. Welcome to this episode of The Deep Dive featuring John O'Nolan. Oh, I nearly got that perfect. I've got these new braces, which are kind of giving me a bit of a lisp. I got them yesterday, and now I'm having to talk slowly because apparently for a few days they give you this lisp. So
Bedding in period.
Apologies if I sound weird compared to the last time we spoke. But yeah, thanks for joining us on the show. Can you give us a quick intro for the people in the chat who might not know who you are and kind of what is it you do? How did we come here?
Sure, absolutely. I am the founder of Ghost, ghost.org, which is a publishing platform for modern, independent, open source publishing. And that's what you use to power your personal site and blog and newsletter as of lately. And I've been working in web design technology for about just over a decade. Started Ghost about 7 years ago. And that's grown from a tiny little 3-person company into what's now a 22-person startup that's being used by all sorts of people all over the world. So if you've seen nice modern publications, there's a high chance one of them was powered by Ghost. And we power things like OpenAI, DuckDuckGo's blog, some of Apple's blogs, Tinder's, all sorts. You can see them on our site. So That's the very short version. I guess we can probably go into some details later, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. Hang on. So I want to show Google Chrome. Don't zoom in. Why isn't this working? Ah, I understand. Yeah, I just got the Tinder blog up on a screen. So that's powered by
That's
Ghost.
one of the older ones. Yeah, I think OpenAI is probably OpenAI.com. The whole site is one of the better looking ones. And then there's a bunch more. But OpenAI have a particularly talented design team who are
Yeah.
also extremely good front end developers.
It looks very, very pretty.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm just having a look through it right now. So, how are they using Ghost? Are they using Ghost as like the backend, or like what's their setup here?
For OpenAI, they started with Ghost just powering the blog section of the site, and then after about a year, they switched over, and now Ghost powers the whole site, front to back. So the front end's a Ghost theme, the back end is Ghost admin, and they've just used a lot of really creative techniques to be able to do pretty advanced stuff in terms of how they're presenting different types of content, because obviously they've got lots of research-heavy posts where they kind of examine AI and ML learning models, and they've got quite a few interactive charts and graphs that they've managed to get in there in creative ways, but definitely pushing the outer limits of what you can do with Ghost. It's a good example of that.
And so, why are they using Ghost rather than kind of building their own system or using alternatives like a sort of I know the whole like flat file CMS thing is big these days. Like, what do you think of the advantages of Ghost? Kind of in a obviously you're going to be biased, but like, why would a company like this use Ghost rather than WordPress, for example?
Yeah, so there's lots of reasons not to use WordPress when it's a larger company. The most prominent two are performance and security, which tend to just be recurring nightmares. So for companies that don't want to use WordPress, particularly for something that's publication focused, they could consider rolling their own thing using flat file CMS. Most people underestimate how much work that is, how many features don't exist by default, how much stuff they'll have to build. And it seems like an interesting sort of programming challenge that is not that hard at first, like building a to-do app. But like all of these classic programming examples, the first 10% is not hard at all. It's very easy to get a post that appears on a URL, and you put a markdown file in and it spits it out with a template. That part's easy. But everything else, then people want scheduling posts, then they want AMP, then they want RSS feeds, then they want multiple people to be able to edit posts and have permissions that are different per person. And the further down that rabbit hole you go, the more you realize it's actually a fairly complex piece of software that you need. And so what happens a lot when larger publishers start looking around technology options, and they want something that's going to be very secure, very fast, and where they don't have to reinvent the wheel to build a robust publishing system, then they stumble upon us quite often.
Yeah. And so on the security front, this is something I've never quite understood, because everyone says that WordPress has issues with security, but like, what does that actually mean in real life? Like, I still have a ton of old WordPress sites. Are they liable to get hacked? Like, whatever that means. Like, how does security work in this context?
Yeah, the short answer to that is yes. The longer answer is it depends. Common misconception is that WordPress itself is insecure, which is not actually true. And just for context, before I worked on Ghost, I was the deputy head of design for WordPress. So I've worked on WordPress core for many years. I'm very, very familiar with it. And WordPress itself is reasonably secure, despite the shortcomings of PHP and that kind of older architecture. But where it falls apart is plugins. And plugins can be built by anyone. They're not necessarily maintained. They don't have a review process, like Apple or Google and Android. They just exist, and you can install as many plugins as you want, and most people install tons. And then you don't update them, because updating plugins breaks your site. And plugins typically are the number one vector through which all security problems with WordPress happen. And so if you ever see database connection could not be established on a site that you normally visit, or some dodgy looking links and hacksaw material, that's almost always plugin vulnerability that has been exploited. Can also be themes sometimes, but typically plugins.
Okay, and I guess for Ghost, because you don't have the option of other people adding plugins, does that automatically just solve a big chunk of the security woes?
Yes, two parts. That Plus, Ghost is written in more modern technology. It's Node.js rather than PHP. The entire stack it's built on is just a lot newer and has a lot of security features built in from the very, very base, as it were.
So on the PHP front, when I was kind of doing reasonably extensive coding a few years ago to build like a question bank software, we used Laravel with PHP as like the backend, and that seemed to work really well. And I kept on coming into this debate of, and often I get this question. People say, how do I start to learn how to code? And I always say, well, it's pretty reasonable to start with HTML and CSS because you can learn those within like a few days and you can play around with it. And then what do you learn next? I often say JavaScript/Python/PHP, and I'm never quite sure what angle to kind of officially recommend someone down. Like, what do you think about that?
Yes, the proper answer is it depends on what you're trying to build, and there's different programming languages that are suited to different things. Usually most people don't need that level of nuance, and my personal opinion is the best possible stack you can choose, particularly if you're working on your own or maybe with one other person, you're just getting started, maybe you're just learning coding, is actually PHP and Laravel. I think hands down you can build the most complete app with the fewest resources, the fewest people in PHP and Laravel, and get started as fast as possible. There's lots of other routes you can go. But Laravel, I don't know if you've seen laracasts.com.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's
I spent like hours and hours on that every day in like 2016.
Yeah, and Jeffrey's screencasts are just unbelievably good. They're so good for learning programming, particularly once you've gotten past the HTML and CSS point, and you just want to dig into PHP. The way he teaches, I find, very, very accessible. And you can do tons with Laravel.
Yeah, I first came across it in my, I think, third year of med school when I was building this question bank thing. And just like my mind exploded as to, oh my God, this is amazing. And then during like my lunch breaks, I'd sit at my desk and just watch Jeffrey's thingies on Laracast, be like, oh, I'm just learning so much stuff here, even when I'm not kind of following it along. And often I'd kind of build something and then I'd be like, okay, I've run into this problem. Let me see if he's got a solution to this. And then I would sort of unlock the next level of like Laravel, be like, oh, I can now do this thing. And it was so great.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's rewind back a bit. And so how did you get started? Like, what did your career look like up until you started Ghost?
Kind of like the opposite of yours, I think.
Right.
You've been very good in education and academia, and following those paths of lots of difficult tests. I was not good at any of those things at all, and I had a bit of an unusual upbringing. My family moved around the world, so my first language was Dutch. I grew up in Holland first, and then we moved to the Philippines. I lived there for 7 years, and moved to the UK for the first time when I was, 18 or something. Dropped out of schools all the way through at various points, not because I wasn't able to do any of it, but more because it didn't engage me. It wasn't a format. That type of learning just never worked for me, and so I've always just been a bit of a, I'm going to do it my way, whether that works or not. That's my guiding light is always, I'm going to do it my own way, and that certainly is not compatible with exams and that phase of life. So bit of a weird start, and I originally I got myself into Brighton Institute of Modern Music eventually, studied music. Figured out I was not going to be a good musician. I was surrounded by great musicians, and what I learned from that was that I was not one of them. They were a different type of person. But I was good at making websites for them and helping to promote them. So one day, one of my favorite musician friends turned around and said, how much do you charge for a website? And I said, what do you mean? Because I've been doing them all for free. Like, this is just something I really enjoyed. And they were like, hey, how much do you charge? And I was like, oh, light bulb moment, 100 quid. And they were like, yeah, okay. And then that was the real penny drop. This was, 2006, years and years and years ago. And from there, I did more and more freelance work. I went through a couple of agencies. I didn't love that. Went through a couple of startups. Then eventually just kind of was self-employed and doing freelance web design, and more WordPress. And WordPress was growing very fast at the time. And at a certain point, I thought the way I can charge clients more and the way I can raise my rates and sort of hit the next level of whatever I'm doing is going to be to work on WordPress. And WordPress is open source. Anyone can contribute or get involved, help kind of write code or do design for core WordPress. You just have to show up and get involved. So I did. And within a couple of years, I was the second head of design for that open source working group. And it was around that time that WordPress was really transitioning from its kind of early roots as a blogging platform into this monolithic thing that wasn't really sure what it wanted to be, but kind of wanted to be everything. And it was, at the time, it was chasing Tumblr. Since then, it's kind of moved to be chasing Squarespace and then Shopify. And WordPress has kind of just blossomed out of this blogging platform into a do-everything website builder. And it was a really interesting time. But all my client work and all the stuff I was interested in was publishing. It was blogging and publishing. And when I was building sites for companies, it was always their blogs, their company blogs. And that use case is what I was really familiar with. And so that was the kind of weird path that eventually led to the idea of Ghost, which was, what if you rebuilt WordPress and thought only about the publishing side and tried to do it with great new technology and great design and just rigorous focus on one use case rather than trying to solve everything.
Okay. And so you have this idea that, hey, why don't I make a WordPress alternative that's just focused on blogging? What's kind of going through your mind then? Because surely you're thinking that the world doesn't need another website builder. WordPress is already out there. Presumably at the time there were things like Weebly and Wix and stuff starting up. Like, why? Like, what on earth would prompt you to think, you know what, I can actually make another website builder and do it well?
Yeah, that's actually exactly what I was thinking. It was spot on. And so I'd rejected working on this idea for years because I thought, A, it wouldn't work, and B, it wouldn't be a big enough idea. Like, who wants another blogging platform? And clearly I can never build anything that's going to be bigger than WordPress. So I'd kind of pushed this idea to the back of my mind, despite it eating away at me for a couple of years of like wondering, what would it be like? Could you do something better? Could you make it work better? But it didn't go away. The idea it stuck. And I had always had these ambitions when I was, I don't know, somewhere between 18 and 24 of, I want to be a millionaire. I want to be very financially successful. I want to start a business. I want to do very well. Yeah. And so the requisite for that in my mind was I needed a really big idea. It couldn't be a small idea, and it couldn't be just another blogging platform. And then I started traveling full time around 2011. I got rid of my house in the UK again, where I'd only been for a few years, and just set off with a backpack around the world. And I was still doing client work, and this idea was still eating away at me. But there was something else that was eating away at me, which was that once you sort of sell all your possessions and you have nothing but a backpack, a lot of existential questions creep in, because you don't realize how much of your life you spend thinking about what you want to acquire next, whether that's, camera gear, a car, new sofa. You spend a disproportionate amount of time, at least I did, researching and thinking about what you want to acquire in your life next. And when you only have a backpack and you can't put anything in it, there's this existential void, and everyone goes through it when they start traveling or doing the nomad thing of, okay, so I can't buy anything. What do I spend all day thinking about? And it all gets very, what's the meaning of life and what are we all doing here? And I found myself playing this game a lot. And the game was one I think everyone's played, and it's, what would you do if you won the lottery, right? You win $10 million or $100 million, whatever amount you want. Some wealthy relative dies. You come into a massive amount of money, and what do you do now? And in the beginning, that game is really, really fun. Give your boss the finger, pick up a Lamborghini, like go full David Dobrik, buy your friends Lamborghinis, all the lenses you want, all the MacBooks you want, easy, right? Okay, well that'd take about a week. So okay, what's after that? And it's still quite easy. Before 2020, maybe you'd go and do a bunch of travel, get a house, try and learn some things, maybe start a business, maybe give to charity. Then it gets a little bit harder. Like, when you've exhausted that, what do you do next? And I don't know, invest in philanthropic endeavors. And what I figured, I'd get to the end of this game every time, and I could figure out that I could go full Grand Theft Auto and spend ludicrous amount of money in 1 or 2 years. But I could figure out that after 1 or 2 years, there would be this moment where you'd wake up on a Saturday morning, having done all of the things that you thought that massive amounts of wealth would give you, and the sun would be shining and the birds would be chirping, and you would have to answer a new question, which is, what do you do now? What do you do with your time, not with your money? And at the time, I will play this game just constantly, and I couldn't figure out the answer, and I found it very frustrating. But I was sitting on a beach one day in the Philippines, where I had traveled back to in 2012 to learn to kite surf, which is something I'd always wanted to do. And I was sitting there with a laptop, hacking away on open source code, WordPress at the time, with some friends I'd just made, watching people kite surfing in front of me. And the answer I suddenly realized to that question was I would just do this. This is what I would do. At the end of the wealth tunnel of imagination, I would travel, I would work on stuff I like and care about, and I would have the freedom to do whatever I want whenever I want. And then I realized I was already doing that. And at the time, I was making £25,000 a year, somewhere thereabouts, with very modest salary in tech by any stretch of the imagination. And it didn't require more than that. It would be great to have more than that. But that completely changed my perspective on what business idea I needed. I no longer needed a $1 billion idea. I no longer even needed a $1 million idea. I just needed an idea that I cared enough about to work on it for a really long time and to make at least £25,000 a year. And so to go all the way back to your original question, why would I start a blogging platform when there are so many other blogging platforms? Because I finally realized I didn't need a big idea. I just needed one that I thought I could do a good job of, to the tune of moderate success. And I knew that I could achieve at least that. I was confident I could achieve at least that.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I remember last time we talked, you kind of talked about this if you won the lottery question. And this is something that I also think a lot about, just like all the time. Just like, what do I actually want to do? And when I was working as a doctor, my instant answer was that, okay, cool. I probably wouldn't work as much, if at all, as a doctor, because it wasn't at the time inherently fulfilling, and it's not the sort of thing I would have actually wanted to do if I'd won the lottery. And I think, yeah, I'd probably want to learn how to draw and to kind of like produce music, and I'd probably still make YouTube videos, just probably at a kind of less frequently than I currently do. I probably wouldn't make any online courses, but I still want to teach stuff, and so I'd probably do that for free because I wouldn't need any money. And so it kind of landed me on this thing of, I enjoy making videos, I enjoy teaching, which is kind of basically what I'm doing now. And so it's in a way, it's kind of like a liberating idea of what's the delta between your kind of life when you've won the lottery and your life right now, and actually are there significant differences between the two? And I think when I first read the 4-Hour Workweek, that kind of turned me onto this idea that actually people don't want to become rich for the money. They want to become rich for the lifestyle that they think it can afford them. And like you said, you were sitting on a beach in the Philippines on your laptop, having just done kite surfing. That's all very eminently achievable with a reasonable salary. It doesn't need to be absolutely huge. As the company has become more successful and as you've made more money, how do you stop the lifestyle creep from setting in? Because you're living in a pretty fancy ass looking place right now. Is that one of the Artifox desks that you've got in front of you?
I don't even know what that is, so that should answer that should answer that. You mean this?
Yeah.
This is a I think it was £20, $30 from my nearest Thai office supply store.
Oh, no way.
I'm in Thailand right now.
Okay.
So, no, I don't. I've got nice camera, nice computer, nice microphone. Those are the things I like.
Yeah.
I guess the simple answer is I still try and keep things to a size that fit in suitcases. I don't own anything that doesn't fit in a suitcase that I can travel with, and that has a very good forcing function of avoiding lifestyle creep. This is a rented house, and up until this year, I was moving country every 3 to 6 months, and spent a lot of time going between Vancouver and South Africa and Thailand and Bali and a few places in between. And so the backpack, but now suitcase question is a good way of keeping some of that a little bit in check.
Okay, so I thought you'd bought a place in the Philippines or something.
No. Renting in Thailand right now.
Renting in Thailand.
Don't own a house anywhere.
Oh, and you weren't planning to buy one last time we spoke?
No, I'm planning to buy a boat. You might be thinking of that.
Oh, yes, that's right. Okay.
Or as I call it, floating suitcase.
Floating suitcase. Why don't you want to? But okay, so there seems to be a bit of a debate amongst some bloggers that I follow about kind of the nomad life as distinct from the sort of stay in one place, invest in the local community, build roots type thing. And some people say that, well, the nomad thing is fun for a few years, and then you get out of your system, and then you realize that actually what you want is a stable job. You want to spend time with the kids. You want to kind of have your friends living around you. Like, how do you think about kind of that balance between wings and roots, as it were?
Yeah, it's a good one. I think it's really sort of applies to everything in 2020, really. It's sad how polarizing this question has become. There's always this, everyone has to agree on the best way. And if you disagree with the best way, you just don't know yet.
Yeah.
I think in reality, I know people in both of those camps. I know people who have been doing the nomad thing for 20 years and still love to do it. I know people who've done it for 2 years and got it out of their system and become sick of it. And I know people who've settled and they travel for holiday and have never even been remotely interested in doing the nomad thing, despite having the ability to. A lot of our team members at Ghost, which is they're all remote and have been since the start. They've always had the ability to travel. Many just enjoy the freedom of being remote without the travel. So I think it's different for everyone. For me, I sort of grew up moving around, so I really don't have an internalized personal version of what home is. I moved when I was 10, and again when I was 16, and again when I was 20. I don't have a group of friends that I grew up with in a particular country, so there's nowhere, when I think about like where's home, where should I settle, it's almost the opposite problem. I have no idea where home is. I have no idea where I should settle, and the boat is my get out of jail free idea of how can I buy a house but still not be tied to any one place or any one country.
Okay, so what about, so surely you must make friends where you set up shop, like if you're living in Thailand for 6 months at a time. How do you kind of connect with kind of people?
It's different place to place. These days, I have friends that I've known for a long time in lots of different places. So I go back to a lot of places. I think that's something that happens the longer you do the nomad thing for, is you figure out the places you like and you tend to go back there in the seasons when those places are the best. It becomes less about what new exciting thing am I going to explore, because the most overlooked thing about, quote unquote nomad life is you spend a disproportionate amount of time working. It's not all travel and fun. So you really care a lot more about what it's like to live somewhere than what it's like to explore somewhere. So I tend to go back, like I said, between Vancouver, Cape Town, Chiang Mai here in north of Thailand, Bali sometimes. And in those places, over the years, you bump into people, get introduced through friends of friends, like co-working spaces, occasionally at local events, but I don't do those very much. And it's just organic network, for want of a less buzzwordy term, that falls out. And then there's the internet, there's Twitter, there's people you follow who figure out that you're nearby and say, hey, do you want to meet up for a drink? And that's probably the most common vector of meeting people that I've never met before.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So you feel like you're not kind of losing out on anything social life-wise by being a nomad?
No, but I think that's very personal for me, because I didn't necessarily have that before becoming a nomad, right? I think people who grow up in one place with lots of friends would have a different perspective on that.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, it's one of those things that I have always wanted to try. And now I'm sort of in a position where I can try it, but then 2020 happened, and then all of this sort of stuff. And so how do you get started? Do you just like buy a one-way ticket to, I don't know, some place that seems to be good on Nomad List and just like go for it? Or is there more method to the madness?
No, it's literally that. People love to come up with great ideas of what you have to do and what it might involve, but no, fundamentally it's just that. And it's I think you were saying in one of your recent videos about moving to the US, there's never a right time for anything. There's never a perfect time for a life change. At a certain point, you decide and you go and you find out, and it never feels comfortable. And you either embrace that discomfort and you embrace that risk, or you are paralyzed by it, and it's not for you. It's not something you enjoy. For me, I do enjoy it. I like to push myself. I like to find out what I don't know yet and try new things. So yeah, buy a one-way ticket is the advice I would give anyone. I mean, there's more nuance to it, right? Like,
Yeah.
of course, it's helpful to have a income which is location independent, so something usually based on the internet, and to have, I really think you need at least $1,000 to $2,000 a month consistent income regularly to make it work.
Okay.
And at that point, you got to be content with doing it on a kind of budget scale, staying in not fancy, nice places, but
Okay.
looking for deals. But it's entirely possible.
So how much do you need to start staying in like a fancy place in like Thailand or like in Bali? Like what would like I'm imagining I want to set up shop in like a nice sort of like the place you've got there that will look good on camera as being my main thing. And everything else is kind of secondary, but as long as it looks good on camera, then I can set up shop and do my videos and stuff.
Yeah, I would say once you get over, it's this plateau S curve, right? Once you get over about $3,000 a month, you're at the top end. Anything above that is just gets into ludicrous luxury. But you're kind of $1,000 a month minimum.
Yeah.
3,000 and up, you're in real luxury in Asia, at least, right? If you're going to Vancouver, $3,500 a month gets you a shoebox in downtown Vancouver. The slower you travel, so the less flights you take, obviously the more affordable it is, particularly long distance flights. But that's kind of good range, I'd say.
Okay. And do you just kind of book out an Airbnb for like a month at a time, or what? How does it work?
Yeah, so the secret is Airbnb is just awful.
Okay.
Avoid Airbnb at all costs.
Okay, fine.
Airbnb is the best way to get swindled. I don't know. It's like the early eBay of anything. You'll pay too much. They'll bait and switch you on what you think you're getting. No, the best thing you can do is use Airbnb for your first 3 to 7 days when you go to a new place.
Yep.
Or a hotel. Okay. Either one. Something you can book in advance. But all the best deals and all the places where you'll actually find somewhere nice to stay for an extended period of time, they're not on the internet. So particularly in Bali, you will not find like the good houses on the internet. Okay. You need to show up, get a guest house for a week, and then start talking to people and say, hey, I'm looking to rent a house for 1 month, 3 months, whatever. And then you'll get in touch with local estate agents or people who kind of broker those short-term deals. Every country is slightly different. Again, this is more Asia focused. It's harder when you go to places like Canada or I don't know, Australia, UK, or they have less short-term rental options than a lot of places.
Yeah, because I guess like I'm imagining if I went to an estate agent in London and said, hey, I want to live somewhere for 3 months, they'd be like, yeah. But I guess it's not quite the same in like Bali or Thailand or the Philippines and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So you rock up, you live there in an Airbnb/hotel for 7 days. You find a local estate agent, say, I'm looking for a cool place, and presumably, like, you tell them I want something that has fast internet and stuff like, and they show you around, and is that how it works?
Pretty much. That's pretty much. I mean, every country's a little bit different, but that's
that's pretty much how it works. Okay, that seems remarkably straightforward. Okay, in my head, all of the various barriers to doing this are just kind of slowly being whittled away. To what extent?
The thing you capitalize on is so in comparison to the UK, where you get a let, you put down a deposit, you sign gas, electric, whatever utilities. There's all this paperwork that ties you into contracts and long-term contracts. Doing the short-term let thing, there's just none of those. So you pay what is regarded as a premium compared to what locals would pay to rent a house, maybe only for 3 months at a time, but everything's included, or there's no utilities, everything's in there, the house already has internet, and there's no contracts of any kind. So the biggest shift in terms of your kind of expenditure and administration of lifestyle versus living in the UK versus doing this is there's no contracts, there's no monthly bills, you're just kind of paying as you go on everything, and that makes everything very straightforward, because if you don't like something, okay, up and change. I mean, again, that used to be how it was. This year's a little different.
Yeah, quite. Okay, and for everyone in the chat, Angus is going through and kind of collating all of the relevant questions. So if you guys have any relevant questions, or any just general questions for me and John, stick them in the chat below, and Angus will collect them on the Notion live blog that we've got going on. How have things changed more recently with the COVID stuff? Because you're still doing the travel thing, so it seems to be not affecting you.
Well, the timing in terms of my personal circumstances was very lucky. Every other year up until this year, I've had 3-month lets and visas that are all short term. Most of the time when you're traveling around, you get a tourist visa that's somewhere between 30 and 90 days. And then you have to leave, or you have to apply for a longer term visa, which is usually complicated and sometimes expensive.
Okay.
This year, by sheer coincidence, in December, we had taken out a 1-year lease on this house in Thailand and had applied for a 1-year visa to stay in Thailand for a bit longer. And then by January, those two things became very, very, very relevant. And by February, even more so, and by March, it was a whole different thing. So it was the 1 year where we'd planned to stay put and not move around as much. And the timing was extraordinarily lucky for us.
Okay.
Things in Thailand are unbelievable. We've had no local transmission in 4 months, and it's almost like normal again here. It's kind of crazy. The only difference is face masks in shops. Other than that, everything is open, everything is working, which is great, but I understand very different to most places in the world right now.
How did you decide that you wanted to stay put for a whole year? Kind of it would have been quite the departure from your usual kind of 3-month kind of lifestyle.
Yeah, so it's kind of related to buying a boat. So I'd had this dream of how could I have a home but still keep traveling. I think maybe a boat would be it. And so we put down an order to buy a boat at the end of last year, and then decided to stay in one place, work really hard for the rest of the year whilst waiting to move on to it.
Okay.
And save all our money, like every single penny we possibly could. Yeah. That was the motivation, or the trigger for it.
Okay. So are you married, living with a wife? Like, what's your situation, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, married. My partner travels with me. She also works on Ghost now. She used to work for other startups remotely, but now we work together, and that makes logistics a lot more straightforward.
Oh, nice. How do you guys meet?
Through friends of friends over a decade ago, and then the timing was never quite right until eventually one day it was, and yeah.
Okay. And did you know kind of upfront that she was also into the whole kind of traveling forever type vibe, or was that not necessarily a case you had to make for it?
No. I think she always had the travel bug. Not necessarily travel forever bug, but then as digital nomad thing started to take off, I started doing it about 5 or 6 years before her.
Okay.
And it was always something she wanted to do and was working towards. And she started off working in UK agencies doing marketing, and then started working for startups, and then remote startups, and then got to the point where she could do it as well. And that's where our paths kind of converged.
Oh, nice. Is that weird at all, like you technically being her boss?
You would think it is. In practice, it's actually not. It's quite easy. You get good at it, I think, just at separating those two different parts of your life.
Okay.
If you have people who you are friends with, but you also work with, but it's similar. You just draw those lines of now we're in one mode, now we're in another mode of interaction. And,
okay. So like you'd message each other on Slack rather than iMessage, for example.
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. Yeah. And I've, there's quite a few team members at Ghost who I consider very close friends as well. And it's the same setup. Like we, social messages and non-work messages go in Telegram, and anything to do with work goes in Slack, and try not to have those overlap and cross-pollinate.
No, that seems to make sense. What's the kind of tax stuff around having a kind of location independent company, and to what extent can you business expense all of your stuff? I'm asking very selfishly here, so.
So there's so many different answers to this question. The short answer is it's massively complicated, and it totally depends on your citizenship, residence, where you've been tax resident for the last few years, how long you're going to stay in each place, how long you've been where you are now, how many different passports you have, whether one of those passports is American, like all of these things completely change the answer. And it's very specific to every individual person as to what the assessment's going to be. For there's not really expense-wise, that doesn't really work. Unless you can sort of really claim that you're traveling for meetings and there's a direct tie. I don't do any sort of deductions or things or try and mess with anything like that. Just try and keep it as simple as possible. As a UK citizen, when you leave the UK, regardless of what you do, if you're going to go and live in the US, for example, after you have been out of the country for a full year, you can apply to deregister for tax. And then after that point, you have to re-register in whatever country you are staying generally over 180 days in, plus based on whatever laws and things that they have going on. That gets very, very complicated and massively depends for country to country, how long you're staying, how long you're not.
Okay, so
being a UK citizen is an advantage. I will say it's much more complicated if you're Canadian, American, German. All of those have a lot more difficult judicial systems when it comes to tax.
And where is Ghost the company registered? Presumably in the US.
In Singapore.
In Singapore?
Yeah.
Rogue, why Singapore?
So if you want to find, sort of think about countries for incorporating companies like hosting companies, and the company is the app. So we sort of looked around at what, as a fully remote company, we have customers all over the world, we have team members all over the world. There's not one geography that makes sense. We've never had an office anywhere. So if you think about it from that point of view, what's the best country to start a company in where you have access to all of the best financial services in the world, ease of doing business, preferential tax rates, and great sort of startup scene and access to any of those preferential bonuses or incentives for startups, things like that. Singapore's top of the list every time. You've got Stripe, you've got TransferWise, you've got all the things you need to run a company, but it's pretty unique. I think you have to be really fully remote for that to be the best option. I think for a lot of people, the best option is usually start a company wherever you live. And if that doesn't give you access to the things you need, maybe consider using something like Stripe Atlas to incorporate in the US, because then you'll have massive amount of access to things. The weird thing that people don't understand, I think, because I get a lot of questions about this, is the taxation, company taxation, and where you incorporate matters a lot less than you think, because there's so many other costs that go on. Like in Singapore, theoretically, tax is much lower than in the UK, but our payment processor rates are double of what they would be in the UK, and our banking fees are triple what they would be in the UK, and our accounting fees are 10 times what they would be in the UK.
Fine.
And it all kind of, in my experience, it all kind of balances out, and a lot of the optimizations are a lot of headaches in return for not nearly as much benefit as most people think when they imagine what it must be like to sort of optimize tax residence for companies or themselves.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Like I've been vaguely thinking, because my YouTube stuff is all registered in the UK, and 19% corporation tax isn't bad, but it's a bit annoying. And so I was thinking, hey, what if I just lived in Estonia for a year and then set up shop there? But I guess it's probably just not worth it in the long run. It's pretty easy to just do everything from the UK. Yes,
and all of those loopholes that used to exist are closing anyway. Foreign Controlled Corporations Act, I can't remember, I think it's FATCA. If you are a UK person, you have a business overseas, and you are in any way considered to have ties to the UK, then the UK will just say, regardless of where that company is incorporated, that is a UK company. It's controlled by a UK individual. You can't claim otherwise.
Okay, sure. And the fact that I have a house here and I potentially want to do my medical training here will all be factors that really, 100%. Come on, mate, you're in the UK. Don't be weird about it.
Yeah.
Fine. So is what you do is that you pay yourself a salary from Ghost, or salary plus dividends, or however you set it up, and then you will treat that as your personal income, and then you and the wife will use that to kind of rent out these random places in the world.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because I was thinking one thing I was toying with the idea of doing is kind of road tripping around Europe and living in a different city every couple of months. I thought the road trip vibe might be good, because then I can literally pack my entire studio into the car and just do it, and that would be fun. But I was thinking, could I get a fancy Airbnb in Paris for a month and call that an expense, because technically I'm using it to make videos? Is that something that you've kind of thought about, or?
Um, no, I don't think it'll be worth it.
Yeah,
I think
probably a bit
you
dodgy.
save the 17%, right, of whatever that costs. That's when you expense. That's all you're saving.
Yeah, but then
It's not like
also, if I were
you
to take it out as
expense the
cash,
full
it would
amount.
be 32.5% dividend tax, then 9% student loan. So that's what it would effectively
Oh,
cut it in half, is what I'm thinking.
you're going to have to pay those student loans at some point. See, this
Yeah.
is the benefit of being a dropout.
Yeah, exactly. I've still got my 60,000 to pay off at some point.
Oof.
Yeah.
My best friend Peter Levels, who's the founder of Nomad
Oh
List,
yeah.
is doing exactly what you said. Right now, he's traveling on trains all around Europe. I think he's in Austria right now,
Right.
and he's still managing to make it work, even in 2020. That's how dedicated he is to to the Nomad cause. He would be a good person to talk to. You should see if you can get him on.
Oh yeah, that would be fantastic. I've been following his stuff for years, and he's been a big inspiration in the whole nomad life stuff.
Yeah, and in the DIY business PHP, make it work,
Yeah.
don't overcomplicate it. That's his thing.
That's his whole spiel. So traveling with a backpack around the world, do you think that you became interested in that because of the fact that you kind of did it growing up, or is that an experience that you would kind of recommend to a broader swath of people than just people who have already done lots of traveling?
I think it gives you an interesting perspective no matter who you are, and
Okay.
opens your eyes to um, the way the world works the in the places and the ways that you don't see in movies or on YouTube or on TV, and exposes you to different cultures and different ways of thinking and different types of people, which broadens everything. If you, I think, for your audience, which is, I think you've got a large percentage of people who are interested in starting businesses and being entrepreneurs and working for themselves. If you want to have good ideas and different ideas, getting out and seeing the world is one of the best ways to understand and get perspective on what types of ideas exist and don't, and what things different cultures value and don't, and love and hate. And in the same way that companies can kind of achieve diversity by having people from lots of different backgrounds, you can achieve personal diversity by doing the exact inverse, by exposing yourself to lots of different backgrounds and different cultures. Makes you a more diverse human being, which I think is objectively a competitive advantage. You take all the cultural things out of it. I think it's a competitive advantage as a human being to have more exposure to different parts of the world and understand how they work. So yeah, broadly, it's an experience I'd absolutely recommend. I think different people get different things out of it and will value it in different ways depending on where they've come from and their personal experiences. And if you go into it with expectations, I think that's probably applies to everything in life. Is probably setting yourself up for disappointment. But going into it with no expectations other than a willingness to learn and childhood curiosity,
Okay.
is probably the best way to approach it.
Okay. So if I was chatting to you and it'd be like, all right, John, I want to plan out my kind of backpacky kind of trip.
Yeah.
The main thing I want to ensure is that the only thing I really need with me is my laptop and my cameras. I'd love to bring a light along, but I guess I can just get one / rent one wherever I am in the world. So maybe carrying a huge ass softbox. I mean, it can pack it can pack into like a suitcase, but like maybe traveling with a suitcase, it would just be more annoying than traveling with a backpack. Like how would you suggest I start to plan my trip?
So let me see if I can pull up a photo here. You can do some pretty. I'm going to show you my setup where I'm doing my video right now. You can do some pretty DIY. Let's see if this works.
Oh, nice.
So my softbox is an LED panel with a pillowcase.
Yep.
And then I've got a Xiaomi fill light here, and
Yeah.
I've got a couple of Aperture mini battery lights.
Okay, yeah.
And okay, it's not an Aperture, 120D or whatever, but it works well enough, and it fits
just
in a
as good
suitcase.
as like a Aperture 120D with the space light extension, which I normally use for my videos. Okay.
So you can get weird and wonderful with it. And there's a lot of things that will pack down small, like all of this will fit in a suitcase easily enough. What was the question before that?
So
What you would have to plan?
Yeah, how do I start planning planning my trip? Is it just a case of
But
I just like pack your stuff into a suitcase and then just go? Because
kind of.
there must be more to it than that. It just seems way too easy.
So I'll tell you what the cliche is that
Yeah.
happens to absolutely everyone is prior to doing it, you think there must be more to it than that.
Yeah.
I have to really plan this. And to varying degrees, people go down the rabbit hole of research. I must research travel gear, travel equipment, travel everything. And at a certain point, you end up with zipped off trousers, which can be convertible shorts or trousers, and you look like Indiana Jones. You have these like moisture wicking
There's a
shirts,
box.
and
Yeah.
for some reason, you've been convinced that you must have a clothes drying line to hang above bathtubs and all this other stuff. And then after about a year, most people realize that stuff is really good for backpackers.
Yeah.
And makes no sense at all for nomads. And what works for nomads is really a suitcase and normal stuff, normal clothes, normal stuff that you work with,
What the hell's the way there?
and not much else. It's a lot simpler than it seems.
Oh, okay. Sick. Sorry, just give me 2 seconds. Some guy from DHL has just arrived to pick up a package, and I don't know what package he's talking about.
Give him everything.
Give everything, yeah. I don't know. Oh, this is a thing that I'm returning to Black Magic.
Oh, what was it?
They lent me one of the cinema cameras.
Yeah.
Oh,
You didn't
okay.
like.
The courier will bring a manual waybill to be filled in by yourself with address. Okay, I need to fill in their address. Be right back. 2 seconds.
No worries.
Oh, we're okay.
Yeah.
Is he sorted?
I sorted it out, yeah.
Oh, amazing. My housemate has sorted it
Magical.
out. Fantastic. All right.
Fantastic.
Okay. So you were saying.
Yeah, you
the
don't need
suitcase
you
is
don't
the way
need travel
forward.
gear.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't need backpacking gear. You don't need travel gear. You don't need moisture wicking shirts or hiking equipment. You just need the stuff that you have around you right now. Just less of it.
Okay. So just like a suitcase for my stuff, and then like my usual laptop backpack, which is like a Thule 23 liter. That's
Yeah.
I just use every day for my laptop and iPad and stuff.
That's exactly what I have. And all this like lightweight, all the popular backpacks you see on Kickstarter.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
the travel backpack. It's convertible. It does this, and it has all these straps. You don't want any of that. Yeah, shit is heavy, and wheels are useful. Do you know what I mean? Like suitcase with 4 wheels, because at the end of the day, the type of travel nomads do, which involves a tremendous amount of work, is typically going airport to taxi to apartment or house, unpacking, getting comfortable, and then living there for a longer period of time, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah.
And so you have your everyday carry backpack, which is just normal stuff. But
Yeah.
for your actual sort of life, suitcase, wheels, you're going through airports and taxis. Like you're not going through the Himalayas. There's
Yeah.
no Wi-Fi in the Himalayas. It's so much more simple than people sort of get all hyped and prepared for.
Okay, interesting. And in terms of like when you were backpacking and stuff, would you have like a daily routine for like kind of work and then other stuff, or would you sort of fit working around just whatever other stuff you were doing?
You can kind of do whatever you want. It sort of depends, I think, on type of business you have, how many people are dependent on you, what time zones those people work in, when they need you to be around. Okay. I think the more you work by yourself, for yourself, without team members, the more fast and loose you can play with this. So Peter, for example, answers to no one, has no one who answers to him, and he takes great pleasure in that. That's a whole part of what he enjoys and why he structures his life and his businesses the way he does. So he can disappear for a week if he wants, and then he can just work 18 hours a day for a week after that if he wants. For me at this point, I've got a team of 22 spread across all different sorts of time zones. I have meetings, internal, external, partners, customers. I need more structure. So it's I have much more of a normal routine than probably most others. And I think the more, I don't know. Depends on the work.
How often do you have meetings with your team? So I've currently got like 2.5 other people in my team, like 2 full-times and 1 part-time. And at some points we've tried doing like weekly meetings, and it's kind of been helpful, but then it just kind of falls by the wayside because I forget to do it one day. And and then there are some people that say, oh, all meetings are a waste of time. And then there are some people that say have a daily stand-up. Like how do you do it, / how would you recommend giving it a go?
I'm not a big fan of meetings in general. I have more of them now than ever before, but sort of getting to a size where that's inevitable to some extent. I think all meetings have to have a purpose, a reason for doing them. I really hate daily stand-ups where it's just like we're showing up to a meeting, but there may not be a purpose to it. We're just hoping that every day there may be some purpose that spontaneously falls out of the meeting by the act of doing it.
Yeah.
I don't like those. I think they're a waste of time most of the time. So I think a clear purpose is one to have a meeting. For me at the moment, I have 5 direct reports who I have a one-to-one with every 2 weeks. Then I have 2 or 3 team meetings a week.
Okay.
And we have one what we call water cooler, which is a weekly meeting, but it has deliberately no agenda by design. It is just a Zoom hangout for the team, and that's because otherwise you never see anyone, you never talk to people, you're just with them on Slack 24 hours a day, and you never like figure out who people are or get to hear them laugh or do anything. So it's more of a we do quizzes or do online mass multiplayer Pictionary and Snake and things like that, just as a bit of a team bonding thing. But I think change often. If something's not working, change it. That's what we really stick to.
And do you have like goals and metrics and KPIs and stuff as a company that you're working towards, or do you not subscribe to that agenda, that style of doing stuff?
We do, but we don't. They don't run everything, if that makes sense. So we have we have metrics and KPIs that we keep an eye on as an indicator of things going well, things going poorly. That could be, how many signups are we getting, how much is revenue growing, but we don't have goals for those metrics to hit. It's not like we need to grow signups from 600 a day to 1,000 a day, or we need to grow revenue from X to Y. It's those numbers are at a certain level, and we keep an eye on them as an indicator of health. Our goals are more, what do we want to accomplish? What do we want to produce? And that'll be more rooted in, for us, product decisions. What do we want to build? What features are interesting? What do we want Ghost to allow people to be able to do that excites us? And what requests are we hearing from customers? Those are kind of where the goals come from, is less pure data-driven. I think you can lose a lot of character in being solely data-driven. Obsessing over a numbers increase all the time, it typically doesn't lend itself to creativity. It just lends itself to insanity.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, because I've started reading all these like businessy type books, and I'm reading one called Mastering the Rockefeller Habits at the moment, and that's all about kind of priorities and sort of your 5 priorities, your 1 main priority, and seems to espouse having metrics to track. That standard thing of what gets measured gets managed. And I've always been a bit like, I'm not sure to what extent this is the sort of business I would want to run, where we're obsessing over metrics that are outside of our control ultimately, and B, I'm not sure to what extent it's actually helpful to think about, okay, I need to hit 2 million subscribers by the next month, and instead have more goals that focus on like the things we can control, that as long as we're putting out 2 decent videos a week, that's all we care about.
Yeah, I think numbers are, in my experience, they're helpful when they're relative, which is to say, if you are observing changes in patterns. So you got 1,000 signups or new subscribers last month. Sorry, let's be more realistic. About 10,000, 100,000 new subscribers last month.
Yeah.
You got 10,000, 100 new subscribers this month. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
Cool. If that suddenly drops off, 1,000 new subscribers this month, or perhaps you go full Gabby Hanna and your numbers are tanking and you are going to freak out about it. That's something worth paying attention to. But does it matter if you hit 1 million, 2 million next week, or in next month, or next year? Does that matter? I'm not sure. I think maybe your goals are better served in thinking about the types of things you want to make, the types of content you want to produce, the types of interactions you want to have with your audience, and the types of guests you want to have on the channel, what excites you. I think those are what drive forward what you do, and then the numbers are an indicator of whether or not it's working. They are telling you this is going well, this is going poorly. It's a health metric. Is it working or not working? But different people have different approaches, right? There's lots of things you can do, but I think when you get into tech and business advice, there's a lot of, you read about growth hacking, conversion rate optimization. How do we get more clicks and get people through the funnel? And most of it's just bullshit. It's just the best way to get people through the funnel is to make something they want. And the best way to make something they want is to talk to them and have a good idea and to work on that idea. Like whether the button is blue or red or says sign up now or get started. Those things are law of diminishing returns. You can lose so much time there, and the stories you hear are typically written by people who are selling A/B testing software.
Yeah.
They have something to gain by telling you that these techniques are the silver bullet. When you talk to most people who are not selling A/B testing software, conversion rate optimization software, they'll say nothing moved the needle really. And then eventually we found this one thing that no one had written a blog post about or given us advice about that worked.
Okay.
So I think find your true north and what drives you, and try and use metrics as something, as a reference point, but not a be-all and end-all.
Okay. How do you think about kind of what drives you in terms of Ghost? Like, do you have like a company vision, company mission statement, all of that, company values, all of that stuff?
Yes, but not... we don't have a mission statement where I could say, our mission is to
empower the world's creators to, I don't know. Yeah,
exactly. But broadly, what we're trying to do is fix publishing, make publishing work again, right? And publishing encompasses everything. It encompasses writing, podcasting, video creation, and the state of the world now is advertising is going away. It's drying up. Google's eating it all. Facebook's eating it all. Journalism's not in a great state. Independent creators are starting to come up and do all sorts of interesting stuff. Yourself being a great example of that, and many people like you trying to follow in your footsteps. So what's the business model? How are we going to make this work? Advertising isn't doing nearly as much as it used to. Merch is kind of a good short-term thing that people try. Then there's lots and lots of money to be made with affiliate programs and referral stuff. But all of those are kind of, you don't control them. They're sources of income controlled by other people.
Yep.
So how do we solve publishing in the sense that people can build sustainable independent businesses around publishing where they can keep doing what they love?
Yep.
And that's a really, really interesting space. And so what Ghost started with was solving writing and publishing on the internet, creating the website part and writing posts and putting them online. And what we've moved towards in the last year and a half or so is introducing memberships and subscriptions to allow people to own and launch their own, their own Netflix, their own Spotify, their own Patreon, without depending on any outside party. So if you want to launch a paid newsletter, a paid community, or a paid subscription of any description, that's what we're trying to solve. We're trying to be the Shopify of independent publishing for subscription-based creators, where you actually own the technology that you're using to build the business, unlike on something like Patreon, where it's just ostensibly a social network that has money flowing through it rather than likes.
So this shift towards, the membership kind of model, is it mostly aimed at like individual creators? Because I imagine OpenAI and Tinder's blog and stuff are not really going to care about like the memberships feature.
Yes. Very much towards individual creators, but also, smaller groups of publishers and whoever builds the next BuzzFeed, the next Vice, the next media companies, those people as well. And you've got people like Ben Thompson, who runs Stratechery, doing incredibly well off a one-person newsletter with tens of thousands of subscribers. You've got things like The Information and the Membership Puzzle Project. You've got The Correspondent. All of these news sites which are saying, actually, if you become a customer instead of an anonymous reader, we don't need to do clickbait. We can do content that is actually valuable because we don't need to drive up our traffic to get more ad views, to get a few cents from advertisers. We can actually do good content. And that's what we've kind of lost in the last few years, right? Everything is clickbait. Everything is drama, because that's the only way to get views, and views is never diminishing way to get advertising dollars. And that cycle just goes downward and downward until we're in this fake news, Alex Jones death spiral. And the idea of memberships and subscriptions is to align the incentives of the publisher with the audience. You must publish stuff that your audience care about and value, because otherwise they will cancel. And if they cancel, you stop getting money. So it aligns the incentives of, you have to publish stuff that's valuable, that's not clickbait, where if your audience clicks on it, and they should be surprised by how it's better than what they were expecting, not like a
Yeah.
terrible headline that they want to close immediately.
Yeah.
And then you get to a place where it's an upward spiral of sustainability and things getting better instead of worse.
Okay. So this membership stuff is, I've been thinking about it for a while, and then when you guys launched the memberships feature, I don't know when it was, I was like, oh, great. This now makes it a lot more possible to do this rather than having to whip up another WordPress site and then plug in Memberful, or having to use Patreon, which has a vibe of please support me, I'm a starving artist type vibe. Do you have any tips or sort of tidbits that you've come across on best practices for doing like a membership thing? Because this is something that me and my team are very actively thinking about at the moment.
Yeah. So the most important thing, I think, is it has to give people value. It has to. You have to think of it as selling something. What I struggle with the Patreon model is so many people are just saying, if you like these videos, support what I'm doing. It's like, okay, but what am I getting in return? Like, that's how a transaction works. Like, there has to be something that comes in return. And there's so many things you can offer in return. But if you can establish a value of something people actually want and care about, everything gets simpler. Now, for a lot of people, what works is extra content, behind the scenes footage. What musicians do very well is they have, behind the scenes recording our new album. Now, who wants to watch that? Not the broad audience. And this is what I would say really strongly works for the subscription model is don't go for the broad audience, go for the niche audience. Don't go for your 1 million subscribers. Go for your top 1,000 subscribers, maybe top 5,000 subscribers. Your people who've been around since you did your first few videos and are still here now. What do they want? Because what they want is probably weird and niche and specific, and they just want to see stuff that nobody else cares about. Like, hey, Ali, let's see your whole audio setup. What is that XLR plugged into? What's your audio interface? How are you doing your cable management in this studio? A behind the scenes chat where you can actually interact with everyone in the chat because there's not that many people in it. So what tends to work best of all is to make your best content free. Use that to grow your audience. Make your best content free for everyone with the broadest appeal. And then for your niche content where you're like, I don't think everyone would like this. I'm not sure if this is on brand. That's usually the stuff that people that are the most interested in what you're doing are going to be interested in getting access to, particularly if it's something they can't get any other way. It has to be something that is not otherwise available that you're offering. Otherwise, they can just go and get it for free. If you started a news site and you start writing the same stories that the New York Times is publishing for free, why would anyone pay to subscribe? But if you start writing stories about growing an independent YouTube channel to 1 million subscribers whilst going through uni and acing every exam you've ever seen, there's not a lot of other places you're going to get that content.
That's a good point. Okay. Well, one thing we were thinking of is, for example, with these live streams, having them clog up the channel, it's pretty bad on the analytics because obviously a 2-hour-long video doesn't get as many views as like a 10-minute sort of very well-produced one. And so we're thinking maybe one way of doing the membership thing is, as one of the offerings, kind of we still do these deep dives and live stream it on the channel and maybe keep it up for a week or so for people who missed it. But then we take it off the main channel and put it behind the membership paywall, where, if people want to listen to a 2-hour conversation about this sort of stuff after the fact, then they can see it through the membership stuff. Do you think that would be like a reasonable model for this sort of thing?
Yeah, like your very own curiosity stream, right?
Yeah.
This video brought to you by.
Exactly. Yeah.
That would work. Another structure I've seen people do that I think is pretty smart is they'll do, a 30-minute, 40-minute highlight edit.
Yep.
And that's on the main channel.
Oh, yeah.
And it's short enough to get the engagement. 20, 30 minutes, you get the engagement, you get the analytics working the way you want them to. At the end of the video, you say for the full 1-hour conversation, the full 2-hour conversation, subscribers only. And so anyone who watches the full 20-minute video and they want more, that's a really easy value. Like they're getting value from whatever conversation it is you're having with someone they're interested in, and now they can go and there's a way to get more. And if they're not interested, cool, you've just grown your audience because you've produced something that's analytics friendly, that still works within the context of the main channel.
That's a very good idea. So anyway, for example, splicing up this chat into, I don't know, 10 or 5 to 10 kind of actionable takeaways with like sort of well cut curated sound bites with like nice background
Yes.
music and like b-roll and graphics and stuff. um and then the
And so
whole
that's
like
what JRE Clips does, right? Joe Rogan cuts the sound bites of the most interesting things, and he gives
yeah,
them titles that make you want to click,
right,
so that when it says Russell Brand talks about why dogs are actually God,
yeah,
you're like, oh my God, what? And then that
yeah.
clip pulls you in, and then you want to see the whole episode. There's all sorts of ways you can do it, but
Ah, interesting. On that note, have you come across other kind of individual creators doing this sort of thing? What other stuff are they offering as like the value add to
um,
the audience?
the most common number one thing by far is newsletters,
Mm.
which varies in format. But newsletters, this lovely resurgence of what blogging used to be,
Yeah.
of writing to an audience where people reply, and it feels sort of decentralized in a way, and you have the community. It's not just the wild west of the internet.
Yeah.
Um, and the second thing is kind of behind the scenes uh, stuff, whether it's additional episodes of a podcast or additional videos that are behind the scenes, that unseen footage. Um, then if there's people who are doing kind of tutorial content, something I've seen work really well is to have the assets be available to members only. So if you do,
Oh,
say,
okay.
a Lightroom tutorial or a video editing tutorial, you say, if you want the Premiere file or the Final Cut Pro file, download them. Members get them all for free, get the original raw files, get the original footage. If there's some asset that goes with the thing you're teaching, that's a really good thing that works. And then the last kind of obvious thing is community. If you have something you're building a community around, whether it's studying or entrepreneurship, and there's value in people connecting with one another, then having membership be access to a community is something people are very willing and interested in being a part of typically.
Yeah. Okay. Sweet. Like those are all things along the lines of what we've got in the works on the slow burner to launch at some point.
I expect nothing less.
Well, one thing is, so Ghost doesn't have community stuff built in by default. So we were going to use Circle. Have you come across Circle?
Yeah, really interesting new thing.
Yeah. Is there a way of like
seems
hooking stuff together, kind of Ghost memberships plus then?
Yeah, there absolutely is. At the moment, the way to do that would probably be pretty janky and not
Like Zapier
ideal.
IFTTT type stuff, or
Exactly. They seem to be adding support for platforms based on demand. So I'd say, if you ask them, they'll probably get that on their roadmap. It seems like they're very, just getting started in the last month, basically. So I think they're probably going to be gauging demand of what platforms have the most interest in people using Circle. It looks like a really interesting product. It's a bit rough around the edges, but I think conceptually it's a very good idea. I'm quite interested to see where it goes.
yeah, they. I had a chat with the guys who were sort of when they were building it early stages. I think almost a year ago, and I was just like, wow, this is cool. This is what I need for my at some point in the future membership thing. And I was thinking, oh, Ghost memberships plus Circle community plus behind the scenes footage would actually make for a hopefully compelling proposition.
I think it would.
How do you ever I guess maybe you had this in the past, but often I have a real fear of charging any amount of money for anything, because I suppose part of me really worries that, is what I'm selling actually legit? Is it just snake oil that I'm trying to convince people to buy, and then it feels really weird to ask them for money? And then another part of me thinks, yeah, but a little bit, a significant vocal minority of my audience are students, especially from developing countries, who are going to be like, bro, there's no way I can afford $10 a month for this. That's equivalent to a living wage annually in my country, or whatever. So all of these things go through my head when I think about the prospect of charging money for stuff. Do you think about that at all?
I think it's something everyone goes through as they have an audience and are trying to figure out how to navigate structuring things in a way that feel fair to you and to your customers, and also make economic sense to make what you're doing sustainable. Because if you give away everything for free, but then you can't afford to keep doing what you're doing, ultimately your audience loses if you can't keep going. So it's kind of as you have to find the balance. Something I like, and goodness, be a little bit biased here, but something I like about subscriptions is I think they establish a relationship where you are forced to produce constant value at a lower price point, and anyone can cancel at any time. So if you're selling, say, an ebook or a course, and it's what's the typical price point? It's like $199, $249, right? For a lot of these creators who are putting together that type of info product, as it were. Whew, that's a hard sell. Like, that's a lot of money. And okay, maybe there's a money back guarantee, but who's to say if it's worth that amount or not, or if people are going to get that amount of value from it? If you have a subscription that's $5 a month, someone tries it for a month, they decide it is valuable, and they're going to, it's worth $5 to me. It's worth one meal, one coffee, one McDonald's, whatever. I'm going to stay for another month. I'm going to stay for another month. It's this way it solves itself, because they can always cancel whenever they want if they decide it's not valuable to them. And the worst case scenario is they've lost $5 for the most recent month. The best case scenario is they stay a subscriber for years, and you develop a relationship with them where they're a loyal customer to you, and you value them being a loyal customer, and they value what you're providing for that subscription. And after a number of years, okay, they've paid $200. They've paid what you would have sold up front, but it's been in an incremental way where they've been able to over and over again get the value and have an easy out if the value is not there. So for me, subscriptions just kind of make that thing go away, because if you're not producing great stuff, people cancel. So you have to.
Yeah, it's not like you're tricking them out of $249 and then
you can't. You can't make promises.
You can't really. Okay.
You have to really do it.
Interesting. One thing I was hoping we could do while I've got you here, can we have a look just collectively at my website? And if you can offer some suggestions, and I can just kind of sort of brainstorm some ideas with you about kind of where I'm thinking of taking it. Okay. In theory, you should see my screen.
I do see your screen, in fact.
And in theory, the audience should now be able to see my screen as well, and can see the both of us. All right, here we go. So,
how many people have we got in the chat now?
How many do we have? We have 357 people watching right now.
Hey. Hello, everyone.
Okay. You can see my screen on Chrome?
I can.
Okay, perfect. So, this is the vibe at the moment. This is based on one of those random themes that I got off the Ghost Marketplace. And I kind of like the top bit, because I feel like it's very me, and kind of people associate me with Notion, and kind of it looks kind of Notion-y.
It does, yeah.
But then I'm not a fan. I've never really been a fan of this kind of layout of like a personal blog. It feels more like the layout for like a magazine or something, rather than a personal blog. And another where are we? Where are the theme? Ghost Marketplace themes. A theme that I really liked. What? Oh, okay, phew. A theme that I came across the other day that I really liked was the guys who made this. Where is their Ghost in? Oh, no, not that. Hue. Themes. This one. This I thought was very cool. Mainly because of the top.
Yeah.
And so I think for my stuff, because on the one hand there's the type of content like articles, podcasts, courses, book notes, and on the other hand there is the category of content, which is like productivity, studying, writing, reading, entrepreneurship, coding, blah blah blah.
Yep.
And I felt like this sort of vibe would be sort of a best of both worlds, where I can have like start here, articles, videos, courses, podcasts at the top, and then actually just do it by thing in the middle, and then obviously this stuff is useful for further down the line. Does that kind of seem reasonable to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, do we not have this theme in the marketplace? It looks really nice.
Maybe it is in the marketplace.
I'm not sure if it is. I'm not sure I've seen it before, but
Oh no, it is. Here it is.
It's
Yeah.
is it? There you go. Awesome. It looks really good. Yeah, I would totally say that's a good fit for what you're doing. I think the you got a nice chronological feed. You can filter by topic. You can put important stuff that you want to promote and have
Yeah.
people draw attention to in the sidebar. Um, Seems pretty straightforward. What does it look like on mobile? Because that's probably how most people are going to see it.
Oh yeah, good question.
Yeah,
So
pretty
you
nice.
get hamburger menu at the top with those things, but then you have this horizontal scrolly menu.
Yeah,
Um,
it looks really good, I think.
and then newsletter subscription, obviously, and whatever promotey thingy is in the sidebar.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I was thinking is, so for example, if we look at James Clear's articles page, because a lot of bloggers will just have stuff in chronological order, but it makes it harder to kind of stumble across things and then kind of browse them. And I think James Clear does a good job of, he seems to have custom landing pages set up for every single, like, life lessons. This is going to be its own custom landing page, and he's going to link then to some of his blog posts. And then at the bottom, he has his list of everything. I was thinking this is a nice model for what a personal blog should be like, where you've actually put the effort to curate things up front rather than it just being, these are my 600 posts over the last 3 years of life.
Yeah, it's like how a lot of people have a start here page, right, where they kind of highlight their best bits and use that as a lead in.
Yeah. And so if I wanted, is something like this doable with Ghost? It was sort of easily doable with Ghost, whereby I have a sort of page content, and then I have like the all articles by date type situation going on.
Yes, completely. It requires using one of the more advanced features, but I think you're already familiar with channels and routes and things like that.
Okay, so how would that work in theory? Like, would it be?
So,
Yeah.
what we've got here in the URL, we've got life-lessons. So it looks like a page. There's no, it doesn't say tag or anything like that. So to create something like this, we would use a custom, let's see, collection or channel. We could go either way.
What's a channel? Ghost.
A channel is basically a set of search results almost. You can just filter any set of here you go. It's a way to create a content hub. It's a way to search any subset of content on your site. So you could say all posts tagged with news and breaking. We're going to make a channel called breaking news. And it's just a combination of X and Y, which could be multiple tags, could be multiple authors, it could be a combination of tags and authors. It's a way of just creating a hub of content with certain criteria.
Clever. Okay.
And what you can do with these channels is you can pass in a data attribute, and the data attribute will take content from some other thing. So in this context, we could say we'll make a channel called Life Lessons. We'd give it a data attribute of page.life lessons content. That would populate the top half, and you would just write that page as in Ghost as you would normally create a page. And then in the bottom half, you would have that channel filtering for tag of life lessons. And so that would then pull in all of the posts for life lessons. And so that's how you just have this template that takes a top and a bottom, and you could put together as many of those hubs as you wanted. I think they could all share the same template probably, but you just pass in a different data and a different filter for the tag for each one.
Okay. And will there, in theory, there would be a way of making this filter, or as in, would I have to edit my rats.yaml file to just have every single one of these things and then just say these are the pages that I want? Okay. And so for my Krabby theme, I'll just pick my different sort of strands of content and create like this channel for each of them that filters, that gives me a page, but then underneath it gives me whatever display I want for all of the blog posts chronologically that match that filter.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
you could do that for your most important ones, and then just have standard tag archives for the less important ones, where maybe there's less content, you have less to say, less to summarize.
Yeah, good point. And I guess for my newsletter, I can do something exactly the same. He's got like a landing page for his newsletter, and then he's just got the archive. And given that now the newsletters are on Ghost, that can just filter the hashtag newsletter or whatever the thing is.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty straightforward.
And I guess by default, if I want to use one of these themes, what it'll create is probably like this sort of display. But there was another
Yeah.
theme on the marketplace that I wanted to steal something from, which is this one. And I think kind of this kind of display would be like a more interesting, like a more kind of personal bloggy kind of way of showing an archive of 25
Newsletters,
posts,
yeah.
rather than this sort of.
So we're just about to make this one, this theme free. In fact,
Really?
we've
Oh, this one?
acquired this theme company. Yeah.
No way.
So the designer has joined Ghost in the last 3 weeks, and all of his 7 themes are going to be released as free and open source in the next couple of months.
Oh, incredible. How do I?
Yeah.
Where?
I will say that combining themes is a difficult thing, though. Taking one thing from one theme and
Yeah.
one thing from another is usually CSS starts colliding and getting a little tricky. But yeah, this has a very nice single post view. Like this post template view is very clean and simple.
And so if I wanted to, hypothetically, if I wanted to combine this bit with like the Krabby for this sort of stuff, how would you theoretically do it? Is it about kind of understanding the templating language and then actually just building it up from the ground up, just using these as inspiration?
Let's think. So the easy part, let's start there. The easy part is the handlebars file and the HTML. You could grab those and port those over like for like.
Yep.
The hard part's the CSS.
Okay.
So then you would have to figure out what styles are being applied to this HTML,
Yeah.
and try and copy them across into your other theme.
Yeah.
But what's likely to happen is, because of the inheritance of CSS, there's probably some styles that are applied to this that are not on that exact class, and then you'll have a different set of styles within the other theme that are getting inherited and applied. So you probably have a bunch of jankiness and bugs that you then just have to work through. The other way is to build it up from scratch. Just copy over the HTML handlebars and then style it by yourself. I think they're probably equivalent in terms of amount of work, depending on how much you like writing CSS from scratch, or if you prefer just modifying existing CSS. Different preferences for different people.
Okay. Yeah, I quite like writing it from scratch, especially because then I can like tweak the design in Figma or something, and then it's just so much quicker than having to than tweaking CSS and trying to get to a place where I want it.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, the guy who made this theme is amazing. His name's Soro, and he's from Mongolia, and doesn't come from tech or particularly design background. He just started this company out of nowhere, all by himself. Self-taught everything: design, code, Ghost themes, start to finish. Turned it into a successful business, and then applied to come and work with us. I'm very, very happy to get a chance to collaborate with him now. But he's awesome.
So this is his company, presumably.
Yeah.
Oh, sick. That's very cool.
Yeah, all of these themes are his.
Okay. Cool. This is exciting stuff. All right. So next job for me is to do one of these Twitch live streams where I kind of coding live stream where I figure out how to get all of this stuff over from Krabby.
I'll have to tune in.
Yeah.
So most people are quite daunted by this. I think you come from a life of having learned code at quite a young age and done quite a lot of this. So you seem to be quite in your element, going through these concepts and figuring them out. But a lot of people are quite daunted by the prospect of using something that's not like Squarespace, where you can't just drag and drop everything. You have to do a bit of code.
Yeah.
And what I would say is it is harder to get started, for sure. There's skills you have to learn. But once you have those base set of skills of HTML and CSS, which are transferable to absolutely everything, they're so useful in every part of life these days, really. There's a limitless amount of stuff you can do. And the benefit of learning to code that doesn't get talked about enough in the context of building sites like you're doing is that you take away the limits of how far you can go. With most platforms, whether it's Wix or Weebly or Squarespace, there's a limit. You can customize, you can drag, you can drop, but at a certain point you'll hit the limit, and I just can't make it work the way I want it to. It doesn't quite do what I want. But if you go that next level lower to understand the code and how things work, the what you can accomplish and what you can achieve is almost limitless. You can build really as far as your imagination can take you, and that's the great benefit is if you invest that time in learning the skills needed to build things like this, you can create almost anything.
Nice. That is a perfect soundbite for the why you should learn to code, which is something that I tell everyone. But I feel like increasingly I have less and less of a good sales pitch for this because you can just make a site with Squarespace. But I think that like perfectly encapsulates why coding is fun and useful. And I think like certainly for something like this, I suppose I could just go on Upwork and find some dude who's like, mate, I want to combine this plus this. But it's actually just quite fun doing it myself. It's one of those things that I enjoy doing, and even though ROI wise it's not the best use of my time, it's still fun, and so it's all good. That's why I like sort of dabbling with the stuff myself.
Yeah, and the counter argument to the ROI wise is if you do it yourself, you fundamentally understand how it works. And that means any problems or things that crop up in future, you fundamentally have the ability to fix yourself. If you just pay some guy or girl on Upwork to do everything for you, and then in 6 months' time something breaks or you want a new section of the site, there's something else you want to do.
Yeah.
Okay, well now you're shackled to always having to pay someone else to solve your problems because you started from there. And typically, as you progress through your career, you have different values for different things at different points. And early in your career, usually you don't have a great value on time, right? That's the classic student situation is you have tons of time and you have no money. So anything you can learn yourself and spend hours doing is typically the best way to go. Teach yourself as much as you can and do everything yourself. Don't worry about paying anyone. Just do everything yourself. And as you progress and as you start to have an income and you start to value different things, maybe it's a better use of your time than to pay someone further down the line. And that balance sort of flips. But it's always worth, I think, having the knowledge of how things work that are critical to your business. If there's something that's not critical to your business or to your goals, even to your career, outsourcing can be great. But if it's something that really is critical and your whole business depends on it, or your whole site or app or thing you're trying to create depends on it, learning it deeply is one of the most powerful things you can do, because it's such a huge competitive advantage. The people who don't learn it deeply will never have more than a Squarespace site. And when you're in a landscape of everyone having Squarespace sites, how are you going to stand out from that if you can't go beyond the limits of Squarespace? The way you stand out is by having the thing that people who use Squarespace can't do, which is this ability to create more than what Squarespace can. And that's the advanced play. You know, that's the next level up from building basic sites and basic apps.
Yeah, and like I think even something like Ghost, I'm often surprised by how, in a way, how few people know about it, because even because even when I was using like Casper, the default theme, which I think you designed, even when I was using this, in fact, more so when I was using this than when I was using this other one that I tried to build, I'd get emails being like, "Oh my god, your website looks amazing. How did you design it? Like, you know, what did you use? Did you use HTML and CSS? How can I?" And I was just like Ghost.org. I'm just gonna send them. Like, it's just literally the default Ghost theme.
Yeah.
Which makes such a difference, because like the default WordPress theme looks terrible, but the default Ghost theme looks amazing. So
yeah, I think what people get daunted by is we have the two ends of the spectrum covered in terms of customization. So if you install Ghost, you get this design out of the box and it works perfectly. And if you know how to code, you can build anything you want and it will work perfectly. But if you don't quite know how to code and you just want to customize some stuff, we don't have that middle bit. We don't have enough color pickers or enough options where you can slightly tweak your site without having to learn everything about code. And that's kind of one of the hurdles we're trying to get over at the moment, is to solve for that middle type of user who's intermediate to advanced, knows a little bit of code, but doesn't want to necessarily get deep into code just to change their layout a little bit. So that's what we're working on now. And that's something that scares people off, I think.
Yeah.
Less technical people get scared off by that. Also, we're terrible at marketing and making noise. All we do.
So that was another thing I wanted to ask you about. Like, often I find that if I'm talking to someone like Noah Kagan, who's got like an 8-figure sort of software company, or if I'm speaking to someone like Tiago Forte, who runs like a sort of 7-figure online course, I sometimes feel that maybe my own ambitions, my own kind of what I'm aiming for is just too modest, because I'm still thinking of like, oh my god, like I'm making X amount of money per month. That's absolutely insane compared to what I would be making as a doctor. Therefore, like this is the pinnacle. And then I speak to someone who's like making 10 million a year, 15 million a year. I'm like, wait a minute. Maybe I'm just not like aiming high enough. But then there's another part of me that's like, well, maybe I don't really want to aim that high. Like your company is sort of small in the grand scheme of, you know, smaller than WordPress and Squarespace and stuff. Like, do you ever get the sense
Yeah.
of why are we not bigger? Why are we not kind of optimizing for growth at all costs? That kind of vibe.
No, absolutely not. But I know exactly what you mean. I know loads of people like that as well, right?
Yeah.
I look at I evaluate people based on how happy they are more than how much they make. I think I know a lot of rich, unhappy people.
Okay.
I know a lot of people who sold their companies and became very financially successful, and they're very, very depressed because the company was something they loved, and they sold it and they got rid of it, and now they have lots of money, but they played the game. They bought the Lamborghinis, and sure enough, the thrill of that wore off a lot faster than they expected, and now they're left with the existential question which has gone unaddressed, which is, what do you do now?
Yeah.
And I've seen that pattern play out so many different times. So for me, I care more about the freedom I have. That's what I really optimize for. So as of today, Ghost has made about $8 million. As by the end of this year, we'll hit $3 million annual recurring revenue. We've got a team of 22. We can go after all the goals we want to go after. We've been profitable since the first year in terms of sustainability and cash flow and everything. That's great for me. And I scale my ambitions based on what I wish the product could do and what impacts I wish it could have in terms of I want Ghost to be able to create an ecosystem of independent publishers and creators who can build their own businesses on top of the technology we've created. And if I can do that whilst living on a boat, whilst traveling around the world, whilst having a group of humans that I get to work with who are just incredible and have fun doing it, that to me, that is worth so much more than any arbitrary number that you could pluck out of the air, whether it's $10 million or $100 million or anything like that, because you can't buy freedom and happiness really in that way. And I don't know, it's easy to say and hard to do, right? And everyone will have a slightly different experience, slightly different perspective on what's right for them. But I would say, try not to compare yourself. Go for the goals that feel meaningful to you versus the goals you see other people going for, because the worst thing you could possibly do in life is strive to achieve someone else's definition of success and only to arrive there and realize that it's not yours. So yeah, that would be my take.
Nice. So it sounds like it sounds like the way you think about the business that you're running, this Ghost thing, is very much about how can we make Ghost the best product to allow people to do X, or to have a certain impact in the sphere.
Yeah.
Have you come across the book the Elephant in the Brain?
I don't think I have. No.
So that's about this idea that there are hidden motives to everything that we do, and there's that quote that's often attributed to JP Morgan, which is that a man always has two reasons for doing anything: a good reason and the real reason. And when I read that, I really started kind of introspecting about kind of why I'm doing this YouTube thing, and what I worry about is that, like, sure, a part of me is saying that I'm doing YouTube because it's fun and it gets to help people and all that stuff, but really the reason I'm doing YouTube is because it makes me money. And I wonder for you, at what point did it, or has it switched from the I am building Ghost because I want to build a sustainable business that makes money and sustains my lifestyle, to switching to a more I'm building this thing because I care about the impact that it has on the world?
It's a good one. So I did an interesting thing in this regard, which is that if we go all the way back, to sort of around the beginning of this conversation, that moment when I was sitting on the beach and thinking about what should I build, and okay, I don't need a big idea. I went a step further and I inverted my previous goal. And my previous goal was I want to make $1 million before I'm 30, or I want to build $1 million company, let's say. And I tried lots of ideas to build a $1 million company, and none of them worked. And when I realized that that's not what I needed to achieve my own definition of happiness, I flipped it and I said, how would you structure a company if you deliberately tried not for it not to be $1 million company? Like, go out of your way to build something that would not be $1 million company. What would you do? How would you structure it? And so you'd probably make it a non-profit organization. So we did that. And you probably give people the freedom to work wherever they wanted and not have an office and not 9 to 5 be locked into a cubicle. So we did that. And probably want the technology to last and give the intellectual property away so that it would, even if the company disappears, the technology would still be around. So did that. And by making it a non-profit, we set the path as fixed so that the company can never be bought or sold. In fact, I don't own Ghost. I am a trustee of Ghost, which means I can steer it as an owner would. But if I ever get sick of it, I can't sell it. I don't own any shares. I don't own any part of it. I can pass my trusteeship to someone else to run the foundation, but there is nothing I can gain from it. So I let go of the idea of wanting or needing it to become $1 million business, and said, I'm just going to do this because I want to be stuck with it. And if you build a business that you want to be stuck with, or you're going to be forced to be stuck with, you can't sell it, you can't get rid of it. A lot of the decision making changes. Suddenly, you don't do things as a means to an end. You can't convince yourself that if you work 18 hours for 5 years straight, you're going to sell the company and have a big payday. You guarantee no payday. So you think differently about what types of things you build and whether they're going to be a quick win and whether they're going to optimize for a sale or for an investor or for the customer, for the user. And so as soon as I let go of this notion of, I don't want to say greed, but of huge success, that's when success started coming to me perversely. That's when the ideas that I put out into the world started resonating with an audience and started getting traction. And the blog post started getting millions of views, and the Kickstarter campaign started raising hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's when the ideas that I was having were interesting enough that they had some form of mass appeal. And so starting from the point of view of having that mission of the goals are about the products and the user and building the best thing possible was what led to the financial success, not the other way around. So there was, at least for me, there was never a flip of the switch to first achieve financial success and then have bigger goals. It was first make the bigger goals, and if you do a good job of them, financial success will follow. And maybe there's some abstract parallel in successful YouTubers, people who try and get the views and do things just for the views. I've seen typically don't do too well, whereas people who are focused on the content and the ideas and what they're creating and are in it because that's what they love to do, typically an audience finds them. And it's not the growth hacks and it's not the collabs and the channel swaps and the commenting. It's them doing something that so clearly resonates with an audience because they're doing it authentically, not for the sake of getting fame and success, I think.
Yeah, I really love that thing about kind of building the business that you want to be stuck with. I kind of read a similar thing, I think probably from Naval, his Twitter account or something like that, which is that, happiness is when you figure out a way to keep doing the stuff that you want to be doing. And if you can build a business that you want to be doing and figure out a way to keep on doing it, that's very much kind of long-term thinking. And
yes,
I suppose that's the case for me and this YouTube channel as well. Like, well, a lot of times people ask me, "Oh, so what's next? Are you going to try and go for TV or something?" I'm like, "God no, of course not. Why the hell would I do that?" I feel like,
but that's such a trend now. It's so weird. I don't understand it. Like all the Liza Koshis and all these people, I don't know. They grew up with TV and love TV, but it's like all the people from a TV world, like the Casey Neistats, are all going, "Oh my God, no, YouTube is the thing now. Like forget TV."
Yeah.
But there's still like the younger generation of YouTubers who still have this fantasy of being on TV. But it's interesting, you don't.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I just want to. I think what I've realized is that I like this thing, and I like teaching people, and I like teaching people on the internet, and as long as I can keep on doing it for as long as possible, then, or as long as it stays interesting, then that'll be a win in my book.
Yeah.
The final thing I wanted to just get your just like quick nerdy thing on. Can you still see my screen?
Yeah, I was stuck. Now I see you again.
Okay, cool. So wait. So you can see my screen, or you can't?
Wait, I can see your screen, but you're now. Oh no, yep, I see it now.
Cool. Image optimization on the landing page. So
yeah,
you're using this huge ass image, and you're using it as the thumbnail on the homepage as well. And when I was doing this on my site, I ran a few site speedy thingies, and I kept on saying that, like, why are you loading a 3000 pixel image and displaying it as 300 pixels? I was using like Image Optimizely or something for a while, but then they started charging too much because I was getting lots of hits. Is there like an easy solution to this problem that you know of?
there is. How long ago did you do this test?
A few months ago.
Okay, we can test it right now. Can you open Inspector?
Yep.
And then across the top tab bar, it might be hidden behind that chevron thing. There should be a lighthouse.
Lighthouse. Oh, what does that do? I've never seen that before.
Yes. So let's do, if you put the device on desktop, because that's what we're on, and then do generate report. And then let's see what it says. So this is a page speed. This is the same as web.dev performance.
This is good.
So this will tell us right in the browser what the performance score is like, and it will do offline tests and progressive web app tests and SEO tests. It will do all of it in one. So we've got 98 score here. And so what we did a few months ago is we have made all of the images be responsive by default. So they actually have what's called a source set. So every image tag has not one source attribute. It has about 5 or 6. And it loads in all of the different sizes. So if you click on the image and open it in a new tab, you get the massive one, because that's probably what you want if you open an image in a new tab. But the browser is actually loading in, you can see here, 71 kilobyte images instead of the original. So they're fully optimized now, just there in that list, I think.
No, but
there's further potential savings.
Yeah, isn't the saving that you're loading a resource of 230 kilobytes, but you could?
Yeah, that's further potential savings where you could compress them down even more than you already have. It's a broad guideline, but the overall score is kind of a good indicator of whether or not it's going to work well for most people, whether or not Google is going to judge it to be worth ranking highly. Google weighs performance much more nowadays than it used to. But yeah, responsive images is now built in by default and should generally just be much better than it was. We did this maybe 3 months ago. So you might have tested just before we rolled this out.
Oh, my screen just went blank. What was the last thing you said, like in the last 5 seconds?
We rolled this out about 3 months ago, so you might have just tested it.
I might have just tested it in the
before that.
Okay, perfect. So I don't need to worry about optimized images anymore.
No, you're all good. And it does the same for images in the content now as well.
Presumably, I should still, because what we've been doing is when we create a post on the Ghost admin and using an unsplash image, which are normally like 5,000 kilobytes wide, we have been kind of locally reducing it to like 1920 and compressing it to like 80%. Is that all necessary, or does Ghost just handle it behind the scenes?
It will do all of those things automatically behind the scenes. You don't need to do it at all.
Perfect. You can upload a random image from Unsplash. You can use the plugin thing.
Yeah, you don't. It's actually just built into admin. You don't even need to install any plugin. It's just right there.
Sick. That's very handy. Oh God.
So have you ever done one of these live streams where you've leaked API keys or something?
Not API keys, but I've I've often done them where I'm like, crap, I shouldn't have shown that email or that thing, and
right.
So now what I do is usually when I do, because I've got an ultra wide monitor, it's only the central bit of my monitor that's streamed, and the 2 bits off to the side are where I have Slack, Superhuman, like everything potentially sensitive. But certainly it's very easy for people to see my email address. I just hope that that's not a problem.
Peter does sometimes does Twitch streams of developing stuff, coding stuff,
Oh, right.
and
Yeah.
he's constantly leaking his API keys on Twitch streams. And he got to the point of coming up with an idea for building a whole app that would do nothing more than create a Twitch stream sort of tape delay. So maybe a 15-30 second tape delay on his streams, so that if he accidentally had an API key on stream, he could sort of cut to the tape delay.
Yeah.
I don't think he did it in the end.
That's a good use case. I would use that, especially on like Zoom calls and stuff. I've been doing these kind of live Zoom call thingies where I share my screen and I'm like, oh crap, I shouldn't have done that. And then people ask for the recording afterwards, and then I think, well, I now have to go through this 2-hour call and try and scrub out the sensitive information.
Yes,
it's just a bit of a ball ache. Anyway,
a lot of work.
Thank you very much. This has been a lot of fun. Where can people learn more about you / anything you would like to plug to the audience who still might be watching?
Yeah, so if you are interested in doing things like Ali does, or building your own audience, your own publication perhaps, or video or podcast, things like that, check out Ghost. It's great for doing all the things that we've talked about. So that's ghost.org. If you want to find me, the best place to find me and my meanderings is probably Twitter @John O'Nolan, and go from there. I don't know. I have a love-hate relationship with Twitter. Sometimes I'm on it a lot, and sometimes I'm on it not at all for my own sanity. But it has links to all the useful places.
Fair dues. All right. Well, thank you very much. And we've got links to all of your stuff, including a link to Ghost in the video description. So if anyone you want to build your own website, go for it. And I'll be doing a video at some point called "How to Build a Website from Scratch" or something, and it'll be based around this and what I've been doing with mine for the last 5 years. So thanks, John. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will catch you next time.